Mr. Guy Philippe Goldstein, named one of France's top 100 cyber talents. Goldstein is an analyst and a consultant on cyber defense and cyber power. He is a lecturer at the School of Economic Warfare in Paris and an advisor to PwC and Exponent Capital. His talk is titled The Future of Cyber at the Intersection of Imagination and New Capabilities. Please, let's welcome him to the stage.
Thank you. So, hello to all. Very grateful to be here today. As stated, my name is Guy Goldstein. I'm a lecturer actually on cyber power at the School of Economic Warfare in Paris. And also, I happen to write speculative fictions. Digital governments today have become critical to provide key services, but what happens when things don't work as planned? Well, that was one of the things I've tried to explore in my debut novel, Babel Minute Zero. I started to write it in 1996 and then published it in 2007. And in it, I tried to envision a future conflict between China and the US for the control of Taiwan and taking place in large part in cyberspace. The novel got a bit of traction among national security professionals in France, in the US at MIT, and actually especially in Israel. To it, former Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, just a couple of weeks ago at Cybertech conference in Tel Aviv, did mention the impact this novel had on him when thinking about that topic about 10 years ago. And I thought there was this question of cyber power, and actually, could cyber conflicts destabilize international relations? And so this led me to a TEDx talk, and then to a supposedly more serious paper with the Institute for National Security Studies in Tel Aviv in 2013, where I applied Professor Robert Jarvis' security dilemma model to cyber weapons. Because cyber weapons give the perception of an advantage to the attacker, and because cyber capabilities, man, software, computers, can be used either to attack or to defend, when you apply Robert Jarvis' model to cyber weapons, then you enter the quadrant which is top left, which is the world that is the most dangerous, the doubly dangerous world, the most conducive to collapse, like World War I. And actually, the late Professor Robert Jarvis published a paper in 2020 where he indeed stated that cyber could make the world much more unstable. So that's the theory. Okay, great. But actually, where are we today? We haven't seen such a big collapse from cyber weapons. And actually, if you look at recent news, we haven't seen such a big manifestation of cyber power. So, well, maybe I was totally wrong, and not alone, by the way. And what are the prospects now if we move 10, 15 years from now? So let's try to do a bit of a trip into the world 10, 15 years from now. And there are a couple of important revolutions here. The first one, which is actually a revolution that surprisingly I don't hear that much, is that of a world fully robotic in 10, 20 years from now, as the price of industrial-grade robots will collapse, we will be surrounded by smart, autonomous machines. And this, in turn, will greatly facilitate not just virtual, but actual physical shocks from cyber attacks. And what will be at stake will not be just money, but actual physical damages and people's lives. Meanwhile, computing power will continue to increase, perhaps multiplying by a factor of 1,000 in the next 10, 15 years, as we've seen in the last few decades. So tomorrow's drones and nanobots will be much smarter, far smarter, and able to achieve very complex maneuvers. For example, hiding and physically inserting infected USB key or equivalent into computer systems. So that's another example that you will not be able to detach yourself from cyberspace. You will not escape from cyberspace. And then another revolution, AI, with better audio, video imitation, with natural language processing, and with personality models. All these will fuse and will create avatars that can easily succeed at the so-called Turing test. You know the test when you're talking to a machine, and actually you can't even understand. You're thinking that you're talking to an actual human being, and it's not, it's a machine. So, in all the metaverse that you heard about and the social networks, you will have swarms of these Turing avatars that will be able to reach in an industrialized fashion any target on any circles, may that be professional, friendly circles, family, or even romantic circles. And then apply multiple psychological effects, either seducing, or persuading, or angering, or destabilizing, or even simply blackmailing and recruit. Such cognitive attacks could either carpet bomb whole segments of population, or micro-target senior individuals, or critical companies. And this could lead to a fatal collapse of trust in cyberspace. Another revolution looms, facilitated by the sensors of a machine we just talked about. With sensors everywhere, we will build the so-called virtual models of factories, engines, cities, and perhaps even human organization, provided we have advanced cognitive models. But then, if everything becomes transparent and can be turned into a faithful model, then finding new vulnerabilities and attacks paths will be much easier. More attacks will become more operational in military terms. And this will transform Jarvis model. Till now, it is hard to actually physically break big things from the virtual world. And we have seen actually in the last 5 years a couple of ambitious nation states trying to do cyber sabotage and failing. And indeed, if you have a cyber weapon that has a low probability of success, it may be of use for psychological effects, okay, but then it will not be the spearhead of your military campaign. But if now you have very faithful model of the world that you can target, your attack will have a much higher chance of success. And if you press the red button, then the decision makers, the political leaders, will be much more interested. And then you have a high-performing offensive weapon, and now you're back in the doubly dangerous world. So in the next 3 minutes, I'll try to explain how we can actually save ourselves from that. First, we'll have to change paradigm, and government will be very important for that. At the personal level, no more implicit trust. Whenever you hear, for example, Guy Philippe on the phone, okay, if you don't have a smartphone next to you validating the authentication of Guy Philippe, just don't do that guy, okay? It will be dangerous. It's always dangerous, by the way. At the industrial level, because now we will be dealing with corporal damages and human lives, the security investment will have to change by an order of magnitude. By the way, it's not sci-fi, there's a model for that. That's called the airline industry, where a large part of investment in safety and security has been devoted, and still, it makes money. Look at Emirates. So that may be the business model metaphor for lots of industrial sectors in the 10, 15 years to come. And then, one thing you should not forget at any level is redundant technologies that can be kept in case of crisis. Okay, all techs, of course, are not efficient, right? But in crisis, when nothing works, they can temporarily do the job. And this is the reason why, for example, the US Senate has commissioned an experiment in 2019 to maintain redundant electromechanical control system in the US electrical grid, just in case something happens. Another point, an important one, facing the collaborative space that is the dark net with very bad guys, there'll be also a need to further increase cooperation networks, what we could collectively call, our own white net. Especially since the name of the game is to cycle information quicker than the enemy and to always be one step ahead of him. Allied states need to continue improve information sharing between them, but also with private institutions, private cybersecurity operators, and private entities. Why? Cyber conflicts are not happening in vast plains where large armies owned by nation states are going to confront themselves. No. They actually happen inside companies, in the very fabric of value creation and human activities. And that's why there'll be a need for better understanding of financial incentive and constraints for each parties to better cycle information. By the way, just one thing, but large global cloud providers may actually be a large part of this new white net. And finally, an ultimate twist. Winston Churchill said during World War II that truth is so precious that she should always be attended by a bodyguard of lies. Well, this can also apply to cyber warfare. The virtual digital twin synthetic world can also create elaborate deception to protect actual networks. Cyber criminals then will waste time and energy attacking fake targets inside the defensive perimeter of a defender. Even better, fake targets can be poisoned. All of a sudden, each attempt to attack could backfire against the hacker. This could reverse the advantage in favor of the attacker, and this also could be a game changer. And thus, at stake, with all these pro-defensive hints, perhaps the possibility to reverse Jarvis' model, to move this time to a doubly stable world based on the dominance of the defense. And if what's at stake is peace and stability, then you know what? It should be tried. Thank you.